Welcome to Empowered Within, a soul-quenching, transformational podcast that will set your soul on fire through candid and inspiring conversations. Leading experts, celebrities, healers, and I share our journeys of how we've overcome challenges to living an empowered life from within. I'm your host, Jennifer Pilates. Welcome to another episode of Empowered Within. Hi there, and welcome to today's show. I am so honored to have with us my dear friend and personal coach, April Adams. She is an internationally renowned emotional health consultant. She shows women's tools that they can use to get emotional relief from any emotional trigger. Her specialty is working with empaths who are dissatisfied in their romantic relationships. She's been a holistic practitioner for over 22 years. April is the author of 2 best-selling books and a life-changing workbook. Welcome to the show, April.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's good to see you again.
Yes, it's so great to have you and to see you again. So let's start with, what is an emotional health consultant and what brought you to that field?
Yeah, great question. So basically, it's so hard when you do something outside of the norm to come up with the label for what it is that you do. And what I do is so different than maybe what a therapist does or what a life coach does or what a hypnosis practitioner does. So emotional health consultant was the closest thing I could come up with because I help people to deal with their emotions, but I'm not doing anything to them. I'm showing them how to do for themselves. I'm introducing them to tools and empowering them in how to master those tools so that they can find emotional relief and not necessarily need me for the rest of their lives to be able to continue to do work to resolve their emotional pain as life goes on.
Interesting. I love this. And now, what brought you to this field?
Yeah. So originally, I was obsessed with needing the honeymoon phase to just go on and on forever in a relationship. So I used to work, just in a spa, as a practitioner in a spa. And I was finding myself super dissatisfied in my love life. And I started reading self-help books and going to therapy and doing all of these things and realizing that I needed something that was just for me. I needed something to maybe give me meaning and purpose that wasn't wrapped up in my relationship. And so I took a Reiki class just because I one day did a service on somebody who taught Reiki. We clicked and I was like, okay, I'll try that. Sure. And the moment that Reiki was activated for me, that I was able to give it, I could feel it in my hands. It felt like there was a ball of electricity in my palms. And I immediately was like, oh my gosh, this is opening up a whole new world. This is what I was supposed to be doing with my life. And I feel like Reiki is one of those gateway drugs for a lot of people. It's just like the gateway modality that just opens up so many doors. And for me, it right away became very spiritual and very intuitive. And then the more that I accessed my intuition and the more work I did on myself, the more guidance I was getting that the real healing was in the subconscious mind. And I just kept getting that message from every possible direction. And, so I started trying out EMDR and EFT and traditional hypnosis and every subconscious method that I could get my hands on. And I was seeing better relief than I had been just by using mindfulness and going to therapy and things like that. So by working on the subconscious mind, I was seeing some improvement, but it would still take several times of doing any of these methods before I would see relief. And then somebody one day mentioned the Orpheus tools to me. And I was like, oh, I have to try that out. And I tried it and instantly I felt better and was able to start resolving lifelong issues like the honeymoon phase thing, which, I had boiled down to the trigger of needing to be wanted. So being able to address my theme of unwantedness throughout my life using these tools, I finally had resolution of that issue instead of just temporary relief from it or feeling a little bit better or being able to talk myself down from it. I had absolute relief from it. So it wasn't an obsession anymore. It wasn't this deep longing in me. I could just live and be happy regardless of whether my relationship looked like the honeymoon phase on any given day or not. So as I learned all of these steps and all of these things that were kind of helping me little by little along the way, I had developed a career helping other people with these tools. And as soon as I found these tools, there was almost an immediate shift from the focus being on the energy work and the spiritual work into, hey, everybody, we need to deal with the subconscious mind. So, let's get going with that.
Right. So tell me more about Orpheus and the tools that you use when you're working with clients.
Yes. So Orpheus is a progressive web app. So it actually currently works online, like you would get to it through Chrome or Safari or whatever. It works very much like an app, essentially. And it's a mental health intervention. And what it does, there's a set of audio tracks for negative emotional reactivity, as well as some other tracks for belief programming that's holding you back, and some for programming in what you do want to think, feel, and believe and manifest. So with these tools, the most important set are the negative emotion destroyer tracks. And these are 12-minute audio tracks that basically disconnect the negative emotional reactivity that's attached to a particular trigger. So you listen to this audio track, you follow the instructions on the track while you complain about or lament or freak out about or, wallow in whatever it is that's already bothering you. And it's essentially removing the negative emotional reactivity from that particular trigger or event or situation so that you can be more calm, more relaxed, more logical, more at ease around that thing. And what it's actually doing behind the scenes here is that it is convincing your subconscious mind that you're safe. Because the subconscious mind is always looking for, what could hurt me? What could go wrong? What's missing? What's lacking? What resembles something bad from the past? And this just gets the subconscious mind to settle down about that thing so that it doesn't have to be so hypervigilant about that issue anymore. And you can stop ruminating about it. You stop having the fight or flight response to it and just have a neutral emotional response to the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Now, I remember, I think it was almost a year ago now when we first had you on the podcast and we talked about this and you brought this up and I said, oh my gosh, I need to try this. I want to work with you and we'll come back and do another podcast and talk about it. And well, life happened and we have been working together and then life happens more. And what is amazing about this work is that you are working with April or a coach, yet you are in control of your time when you're doing this. And if you're anything like me, like I definitely like my control and felt very safe because while April's guiding you through this process, you are in control of the how, the when, and what you're focused on in that moment. And April helps you. And it has been incredible for me. The results absolutely are incredible. You're having a moment, you're melting down. I remember I called you a few months ago, melting down, and you were like, are you using the tools? I was so melting down that I forgot to use the tools. And I was like, oh my gosh. And immediately it was just such a shift and a change in me immediately. Sometimes when you're still spiraling, and that's why, even though it's wonderful that you're using them on your own in your own time, to have a coach to keep you centered, to keep you on track, which is definitely something that I always need. I'm sure most people out there do need that. So that's that blessing of being able to work with a coach while you're going through this program, because you've been super helpful in pointing out triggers and helping with what to say, what to think about when you're going through, because it's so different and you don't know it, but all you know is that you feel freaking phenomenal in like 12 minutes.
Yeah.
Like suddenly the world was ending and now all of a sudden there's your gumdrops. Like, wow, that's so impressive.
Yeah.
With
it's really
these tools.
incredible. I mean, these tools are absolutely genius, miraculous. I call them the cheat codes for life. They're just like, it feels like you're cheating because of how much more easily emotions can be cleared using these tools. But you're right that it can be hard to just use the tools on your own and figure out what to be thinking about in order to get lasting results and all that kind of stuff. And that's really where I come in, or where any coach who does this work would come in, is to help the person, yes, stay on track, to use them appropriately, to figure out, okay, if they're having trouble consistently doing the work, what's the belief or the issue behind that? Like, why are you resisting the work? And also, how do you get lasting relief as opposed to just relief on the thing that happened this afternoon, so that the next time something like that happens, you're not triggered by it all over again? And that's really where a coach comes in, is to help you figure out exactly what to think about while you play the track to get those lasting results, and to help you get yourself out of your own way so that you can get where you want to be emotionally. So I find a lot of times, if people do this work on their own, they might work on like one or two issues and then move on with their lives. But if you work with a coach, you can often get a total life overhaul, because honestly, you can use these tools on literally anything, but it's always up to the individual, like you said, about what your priorities are. And for some people, they do just want to maybe clear their top 5 triggers ever, and then they don't care so much if they're a little bit emotional the rest of the time. Where other people, like me, for instance, I want to see how close I can get to being trigger free in this life. And so really anything that bothers me, I'll grab the tools and work on it. So, there's a huge range in there of what's available for people, and you get to be in the driver's seat of what's a priority for you.
Right. And I think that's so important. Will you dive into, again, getting into this process, why the subconscious work is so important and how this differs from a traditional EFT program?
So the subconscious is the part of us that's always protecting us. And that's where the majority of our reactions and, that knee-jerk reactivity and the emotions that come up in the moment, and how we will take in whatever it is that's going on around us. And because the subconscious is always trying to protect us, sometimes it's a little over the top and misguided. So it will give us survival level reactivity when it might just be somebody making a negative comment on social media or something like that. And so clearly, many of the things that we're reacting to as though they're going to kill us are not anywhere near that level of threat. And this is about getting the subconscious to realize this is not a threat to my survival. This is not something that is going to kill me or ruin my life. I can let this go and move on from this and be safe. And so in order to get those kinds of results and not have to talk yourself down every time something happens, or go into the reaction because it's your lizard brain that is reacting in the moment when something happens. So we can be taught a million different coping mechanisms and a million ways to talk ourselves down when something triggers us. But if our lizard brain has taken over in that moment and thinks there's some kind of threat, we are going to react in ways we don't want to be reacting. Unless the subconscious has already been convinced that that particular thing is not a threat. So that's really what the subconscious work does, is to help the subconscious to not go into reactivity around particular triggers and issues. And a lot of times that's done by working on the negative things we've already been through, so that when something looks similar, we're not automatically going into reactivity around that. And so no matter how much conscious work we do on ourselves, we're still going to have those reactions in the moment. We're still going to have underlying longings. We're still going to autopilot go to our addictions and try to escape our feelings and things like that. So in order to overcome just about anything, trauma, fear, addiction, all of it, the subconscious needs addressing. The subconscious needs to know we're safe, that it's okay to, deal with things in a different way, that we're safe to be calm. And EFT actually is one of the other methods. You asked about EFT, and it's one of the other methods I was using prior to getting these tools. And I was finding it to be effective, but I got some feedback sometimes from people. Someone that I recommended some EFT to one day said, I one time did some EFT work on my financial fears, and I felt better in the moment. But about a month later, I had a severe panic attack thinking about money. So it was like it made it worse almost. And what my research showed me is that what happens is when you've got an issue kind of buried deep in your subconscious mind and you do a round of EFT on that thing, it's like you're releasing a layer of it. So now it's a layer closer to the surface in your subconscious mind. And so the next time you encounter that thing, it may be an even bigger trigger. It may be even more obvious. And then you might do some work on it and you'll feel better for a while. And then you might get triggered by it again. And then there it is even closer to the surface and possibly even more intense. And you just have to basically keep doing that until it makes its way up and out and it's gone. So EFT can be effective as long as you stick with it and you're able to catch yourself in the act every time that's coming up, do some work on it and release it and keep at it till it goes. And what I've found with the Orpheus tools is that they tend to get that relief in one sitting, especially if you're able to address it at its origin point, rather than having to keep coming back for the same issue again and again and again until it's gone.
Mm-hmm. I find it fascinating. I like to say that the Orpheus tools are like going in and grabbing the carrot at the root, your carrot being your trigger, and it just yanks it out.
Yeah.
Just yanks it out. And all of a sudden you just feel better. Can remember just recently, like sitting there crying my eyes out, going through the process. And then within half of the session, I just don't feel anything. And you feel weird because suddenly you don't feel anything and you're trying to feel something and there's nothing. And you're like, oh my gosh, like this is too good to be true. And then it's just gone. And it's just so amazing to me. And the realm that you can use this on, be it something very, what we might say trivial, to something incredibly intense like I had been doing recently. And it's just so powerful. Just an incredible opportunity. And I know that we've spoken before that your specialty is an empath. You're an empath. I'm an empath. And I feel that these tools are the number one thing that all empaths should be using. Because I think that everyone has triggers, but I feel as empaths, we have like super duper, like octopus triggers. You know, so.
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, it's fascinating. As empaths, we tend to feel like I can't be at peace until everyone around me is at peace, because we're constantly tuning into everybody else unconsciously to make sure that we're safe around these people. But then we're feeling all of their pain and all of their triggers and all of their issues. And, you know, there are mindfulness ways that you can energetically mind your own business and put up bubbles and do all of these things to protect yourself, which can be exhausting, just like, you know, having to peel back layer after layer of an issue gets exhausting. But what I have found is that the more of my own triggers I have dealt with on the subconscious level, the less I resonate with other people's triggers. So now I'm in complete control of whether I'm tuning into other people or not. And so I tend to now just be able to be at peace. And if I want to tune in and see what's going on with this person, you know, what needs addressing, I can kind of tune into that to some degree. But it doesn't just automatically happen. It doesn't just automatically take me over. And I'm certainly not carrying it around with me the rest of the day. And I'm never taking it into myself in an attempt to heal or correct it. And so, you know, dealing with your own stuff, and the more of your own stuff you deal with, the less you just get overwhelmed by everyone else's, because you just don't resonate with those issues any longer.
I love that you just said that. I just had this light bulb moment when you said that now you have to really step back and take a moment and think about tuning in, right? To really to the situation or to the person. And I'm thinking, wow, I've really had to start doing that. Like when people ask me certain things I'll be like, oh, hold on a moment. Let me tune into that. And Lord knows I have not been doing this half as long as you've been doing it. It's so incredibly powerful to know that. And especially as an empath, when you're on that journey, sometimes you feel incredibly not empowered. And we're here to let you know that you can be incredibly empowered through your own actions. by stepping up and working on your subconscious, which to me, it's like the holy grail for empaths.
Right. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And, so I have to back up for the sake of Orpheus, because the tools themselves are completely and totally science-based. And that's where they prefer to be thought of. They are not necessarily, like on board with a lot of the metaphysical things and all of that. However, everybody who uses these tools talks about how magical and metaphysical they seem, even though, the tools are essentially a combination of every scientifically proven method and the best aspects of those different methods and modalities put into one set of tools. And they were created by a guy who used to be a computer programmer. And so there's just so much like science and technology behind these tools. And yet they can have some pretty magical seeming and spiritual kind of effects for a lot of people. And so, I have found that even though I got my start dealing with people spiritually, metaphysically, all of that, that it ended up being science. That was the main thing that we needed to get to a place of emotional peace and to be able to kind of get control over our own abilities.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. And I know that we went through a session with the owner of the company and you invited me in, and I was just awestruck of listening to him speak, because depending on where you're coming from, and I'm hearing all this scientific talk, which normally I would just not be able to handle, I saw all of this incredible energetic power that can come through, that he just wanted to help all of these people and serve. And now millions of people who are having incredible struggles, from horrific things to just little things, can now find relief. And I think that's pretty incredible. And I know some people are saying, well, give us an example. So how about that, April? How about some examples from the one, on a scale of 1 to 10, from the 1 to the 10, the different things that you've personally worked with your clients?
Yeah. So, there's certain things like having your feelings dismissed over and over and over again throughout your life. And so you may find one day at work, somebody dismisses your feelings or something, your opinion about something, and you're super triggered and it's really bothering you. And you think it's just about that person and how they're making you feel in that moment. But if you really step back and go, okay, what's bothering me about this? And looking at that theme that, your feelings have been dismissed, or people have been dismissing your opinion over and over and over again. And so of course you're going to be super reactive to that, because it's been painful and hard every time it's happened. So being able to work on themes like that keep showing up in your life is super beneficial, even though it seems like that's just a silly little thing, conversation that you had that afternoon. It can point to a bigger overall trigger and pattern that shows up in your life. So I work with people on things like that a lot. I worked with people who have certain aversions, like people who can't stand the sound of someone chewing. And basically you just play the track while you think about people chewing loudly. And then it's not a thing anymore. You don't care. It's like, all right, well, they're chewing, whatever. It's, it's no longer an aversion. But one of my favorite things to work with, just because the results are so obvious, is phobias. So I had a woman who was petrified of storms, and she would hide under furniture when there was a storm coming. Like, she was really, really scared. And we had her do 1 or 2 rounds on fear of storms, memories of negative things that have happened in the past around storms, like a tree falling on the family car, her father, when she was 5 years old, running around the house preparing for a storm, kind of battening down the hatches and freaking out. And so she was acknowledging not only her own fear of storms, what she's afraid might happen, but these past events as well. And then afterwards, she comes out and goes, yeah, I'm thinking about a storm. I'm imagining a storm's happening this afternoon, and I'm totally fine. I'm not, afraid or nervous at all. That's pretty amazing. But I just know the next time a storm happens, I'm going to be triggered all over again. And so we did a round on the fear that the fear would return in the face of the trigger, which is very, common for any kind of phobia, that people have had a phobia for most of their lives. And it's affected them in such a deep way, they can't imagine that it could be gone in like 20 minutes. So often you have to also deal with the fear that the fear is going to return, when you get on that plane or when a storm arrives or whatever the thing is. And we did that. And then the next time a storm happened, she texted me and said, I'm out running errands right now, and I really couldn't care less that there's a storm happening.
Oh my gosh, what an incredible story. And all I can think of right now is everyone, including myself, going through incredible trauma and PTSD from the last two major hurricanes here in Florida. And honestly, I wouldn't, and here we go, like here I am who use the tools. I haven't even thought about addressing the fear that is now associated with hurricanes or tornadoes or anything. But that would
be a perfect use for it.
That would be an incredible use for it. And Lord knows there's so many of us after the last 2 months that could use this now. I
can imagine.
I have something else to add to my list of what I can be working on now.
Right.
But that's an incredible story.
Yeah. I was going to say, I have the easy part where I just get to give you lists of things to work on. So it's up to you to kind of parse through.
Right.
What's most pressing, what's going to get me next, and being able to work on whatever that is for you. But yeah, it's incredibly rewarding work, because as long as people follow through and actually do the work as things arise, it's life-changing. And, you mentioned, in the beginning that I tend to work with empaths and people who are kind of dissatisfied in their love lives. And so that's the primary thing that I tend to focus on with people, because that was my journey. That was what led me to doing work on myself and led me into client work in the first place. And because of that, that's who's kind of been drawn to me, are those people who are going through that. And there are endless things that relationships can bring up for people. It often will bring up a lot of our childhood wounds and things that have gone unresolved in our lives. And so relationships can be our biggest classrooms as far as showing us where we still need some healing and what has not been resolved for us before. So that's a big part of what I love working with people on, and also what tends to be one of the most pivotal aspects of people's lives.
Oh, absolutely. And again, with the empaths, I mean, we tend to draw to us people that are a little wounded, or so have their own things going on, usually some narcissism in there somewhere, all that kind of good stuff, so it's sort of the why. And if we can get rid of all of that and not be attracting that, how amazing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I heard something super fascinating recently about narcissists and people pleasers, which, you might as well say narcissists and empaths, that it's the same wound and just a different trauma response to the same wound. And it's often around like not feeling good enough. And so a narcissist will kind of pump themselves up and do everything to make themselves seem really big, really important, and kind of amplify the ego, so to speak. And an empath will go around trying to fix everyone and everything, and trying to improve everything and prove themselves worthy by trying to fix everyone and everything around them. And so that very well could be the reasoning behind why they're drawn to each other, because the wounding is very similar. It's just a different way to have dealt with it and addressed it, different coping mechanism, essentially.
That's fascinating. I had not heard that spoken that way before. That's very eye-opening.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a whole podcast. That's a whole podcast in itself. Like, we're going to have to come back to that.
I agree. Yeah.
It really is.
There's a lot of layers to unfold with that.
It really is. So, April, when you're working with clients, because I know how our relationship has been, and I'm sure every situation is different and customized, How does that go? Do you find that because this is so amazing? I mean, I could never not see myself not working with these tools, in all honesty. I mean, it's just, do you ever see people that then are with you for a while and then do go off on their own? Or I can't imagine not having you to help through the process.
Right. Well, my goal by the end of any package with someone is to have them mastering the tools so that they know exactly which tool to grab, what to think about while they use that particular tool in order to get the results that they want. And so, people may not be 100% where they want to be by the very end of the package. I mean, often they are, or at the very least halfway there, but they tend to get to the end and realize, especially the ones that feel like they're going to need me forever. Like I've had people go, oh no, we're going to need way more than 9 sessions. You're stuck with me for the rest of your life. And then, we'll do 9 sessions and they're like, no, thank you. I'm good. I totally understand how to use the tools. I feel really confident, but I'll reach out if I need you again. So, I get a lot of that happens, but I do other things too. I do sometimes hypnosis or energy work or guided meditations, or even helping mentor entrepreneurs and people like that too. So I can often help with those kinds of things. And that's where people tend to want to continue beyond the package. But once the tools are mastered. And if anything, they might need me in order to be able to step back far enough from the situation that's unfolding around them to look for roots of where that issue is coming from originally. So that's probably the only reason that people tend to need me beyond, our initial work together, is because sometimes we just need somebody to be able to stand outside of the situation for us. If we are too close to the situation to be able to pick it apart. And so that's often where I come in. But I wanted to mention that we do have some upcoming courses through Orpheus, and Orpheus has hired me on as their lead teacher. So I'm currently the international director of Orpheus Academy, which is super exciting title, but it basically means I'm in charge of their training program for practitioners and lay people who want to use these tools. So there is a course coming up, and currently we're doing them on the second Thursday each month. This is a great course. It's a 3 to 4 hour training that anyone can take, whether it's a practitioner wanting to use these tools with their clients, or if it's just a layperson who wants to be able to use these on themselves. These courses show you how to get the best possible results using these tools, learning how to use the tools, how they work, and, all of the ins and outs of the whole process so that you can get really clear on being able to use these for yourself as well. So we do have some of those coming up, and Jennifer has taken those as well. So she will also soon be a practitioner with these tools too. And so, if you feel called to do this work yourself, you could take that course. Or if you want to work with a coach, whoever you resonate with more, you resonate with Jennifer, you can work with her. If you resonate with me, you can work with me. And that we have other people too who have taken these courses and are leading this. And I think it's just incredible to be able to have access to these tools, but also to be able to have access to professionals who know how to really dig deep with you and keep you motivated to keep it going.
Right. I agree with you. The courses have been great, and diving deep. I mean, it's been a year now, and on some things, after this last storm, I feel like I'm still just scratching the surface. But again, to know that you could reach out to April, you could reach out to myself and say, oh my gosh, X, Y, and Z is happening. And to know that within 24 hours and less, always with April and I right there for you to say, yeah, here's a list. Work on this. Let me know how this goes. Call me back. Here's what we can do. That's priceless. And especially I feel in this day and age, where do you get that kind of service? Where can you get that and go so deep so quickly and feel relief? I'm going to say, and just speaking from my own personal experience, especially recently with the storm and everything that I went through, and April was amazing when I reached out. And I was, in a dark place. And within 12 minutes, I can still feel those moments. And it was just the relief that I needed. I was so tight, my whole body, everything was so tight. And I wasn't only just, feeling me, there was family, there's the world, there's everything, being an empath. And so it's wonderful to have these tools. To me, this is priceless. This has changed all of my direction for coaching, my direction for wanting to help and serve people. When you find something like this, you just want to share it because, again, you want everyone to feel good. You don't want anyone to have to suffer in any which way.
Absolutely. And I think that's the primary gift with these tools is that, both for a therapist or just a regular self-helper, there are so many ways that we can relapse, so many things that can just take us down. And it's frustrating for both people. It's frustrating for the practitioner who wants their patient or their client to get better, to feel better. And for, the general user who just wants to feel better in general, to be able to just grab an audio track that they can use themselves at home. So they don't have to go somewhere to get this done. They don't have to have somebody else do it on them. You play this audio track while you feel your feelings, and then suddenly there's relief. Be able to do that in between sessions, during sessions, like wherever, whenever you need it. That's the priceless part, I think.
I agree with you. Heck, I was like, we're in a hotel somewhere. No one knew where I was. And I'm like crying, going, April. April.
What do I do?
What do I do? And sometimes that's all you need. You need someone else who can see beyond the rain. When you're in those moments, and it's normal and we all have them. And it doesn't matter if it's something that you might think that someone thinks is small or not. We all deserve to feel empowerment from within. And this program, Orpheus, is amazing. April is amazing. Being able to turn around. For me, it was a no-brainer to say, I want to be able to help people with this after experiencing it. It's rather amazing.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
It really is. Oh, okay. So we're getting to this time in the show, April, where we're going to have some fun. It's a little different than normal.
Oh,
and because
I like it.
I know I'm changing up so much. Oh. Okay. So here we go. The Empowering Insights rounds. Question 1. What life advice do you have for our listeners?
Life advice. Well, of course, my go-to is always, if you want any kind of lasting emotional relief, you have to deal with it on the subconscious level. I don't care what method you use. So, you could go with hypnosis, EMDR, EFT, and any number of other things. RTT is another one that I like a lot, rapid transformation therapy. But of course, my personal favorite and the thing that tends to be the fastest, the Orpheus tools. But, it's all about the subconscious if you want to get fast relief or lasting relief.
Love it. What books are on your bedstand?
On my nightstand, I actually just have a journal, and I tend to read thrillers. So I've got a Kindle on my nightstand as well, but that's primarily just filled with trashy thriller novels. That's what I like to read. But
okay. I wouldn't have taken you for a thriller girl. Well, actually, maybe.
Yeah.
I can see that.
I like a little bit of, I like horror movies. I like thriller books. I tend to like those domestic thrillers are, the things I really enjoy. But there is a book that I read recently that was kind of fascinating. And it's called The Molecule of More. Okay. And it's about dopamine and how dopamine affects our lives and how we interact and our political party that we tend to be involved with and all kinds of aspects of us. So I really enjoyed that as far as, something to work on self-development wise.
Oh, that's fascinating. Okay, last question. What is your most memorable moment in life thus far?
Wow. Most memorable moment in life. And it just, for me, keeps coming back to realizing that I had finally overcome my lifelong issue. Like the moment. Okay, so yeah, I would say oddly enough, it's this. I did that work on feeling unwanted throughout my life and needing the honeymoon phase to go on and on forever. Now, up until that point, no matter what I did, whenever I was thinking about my relationship or interacting with my wife, I was always thinking like, why aren't you proving you want me every second of every day? You know, it was just like in the back of my mind, always looping. And I, had learned all kinds of ways to turn it down, to ignore it, to push it away, but it was always in there looping. And I did this work 2 rounds with the negative emotion destroyer tracks on the theme of feeling unwanted throughout my life. She got home from work that night. We're just having a normal, natural conversation. And suddenly I'm realizing, wait a minute, I'm present in this conversation. Those thoughts are not running through the back of my mind right now. I'm just here. I'm here in the moment. And then just noticing like throughout my life, like I'll be on a stand-up paddleboard and go, I'm just present. I'm just here in this moment right now. I'm not wondering how dare they say this to me, or what if this happens, or why did that have to happen? I'm just here and present. So, in that moment with my wife, realizing I can actually just be present and enjoy this relationship as it is and be inside of whatever conversation is happening in front of me. And to have that continue, like typically if I had ever gotten that kind of a shift before, it had always come back. And so for that to just like actually stay that way, I think that was probably one of the most pivotal moments and realizations for me.
I think that's so special. Thank you for sharing that. That's fabulous.
Yeah.
What an incredible gift, which is now turned
into without trying.
Yes. That sounds like a title of a book. I'm just going to say, I think there's a book in that.
I'm on it.
I want you to write that down quickly. Let's not lose that. There's a book coming out this new year.
Yeah. Presence without trying.
Yes, that's huge. And that's where we're all trying to get to right now as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Undoing it all. April, this has been so amazing as always. Thank you. I love our time together. Will you please share with our listeners where they can best get in contact with you?
Absolutely. So you can find me on my website, apriladams.org. And you can also find the Orpheus tools at orpheusmindtechnologies.com. And I am on social media, Instagram mostly, under April Adams Emotion Coach with a dot in between each word.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. And all of April's information will, of course, be over on our show notes that you can find over at jenniferpilates.com. April, thank you so much. You are a love. You are a savior. You are amazing. Everything that you're doing for all of your clients for this world, and particularly for me, I want to say thank you for everything. Thank you for being on the show and being so amazing.
It's been my pleasure, and right back at you.
All right. Well, as we say, everyone, until next time. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to Empowered Within with Jennifer Pilates. Your feedback is important. It helps me to connect with you and gives me insight into who you are and what you're enjoying about the show. For today's show notes and discount codes from today's sponsors, head over to jenniferpilates.com. Until next time, may you live an empowered life from within.